So let's talk about the U.S. men's national team. And coming into this Gold Cup, there's definitely a lot of negativity around them, especially coming off 4 matches of not winning. But now they go on and they beat Trinidad over the weekend 5-0. Do you think after that, the negativity has been quieted a little bit, Nico?
Yes, of course. You won, right? You have LLLLW. Yeah, you're on the right track. You started the tournament on the right track against an extremely accessible opponent. Trinidad and Tobago were horrendous on all accounts, but the United States looked like they had a different dynamic to them, pep in their step. Obviously, the games against Turkey and Switzerland, which were higher caliber opponents, you learn something from them. And obviously, Poch has time to work with this group as opposed to an international window where, seriously, how many actual trainings can you get in a normal FIFA window? 1, at best 2, because of the travel and the recovery and whatnot. This is the B minus team of the U.S., and Poch is going to have a base to see who he can choose for the World Cup, and that can only bring positivity.
Yeah, I'm with you, Nico, in terms of the vibes being quieted down. And I learned this from a former teammate who said winning changes everything. Winning can change critics' minds. Winning can change these players' minds. And the intensity at which they approach that first match, that has to be a constant. It doesn't matter if it's the A team, the B team, the F team. That is a staple that comes with U.S. soccer. The previous generations, they set that bar. And now this generation, unfortunately, that's something that we questioned going into this Gold Cup. And for
even
one
Pochettino.
game, for one game, they answered that. Now it's the consistency in the next match against Saudi Arabia.
Now, you talk about how Trinidad, they weren't much of an opponent. They weren't much of a threat over the weekend. Now, U.S. men's national team is taking on Saudi Arabia tomorrow. How much more of a matchup do you think that they'll be giving the U.S.?
This tells the story right here. Not much. I don't think so. With all due respect to Saudi Arabia, who's missing the core of their group that all play for one club team. It was the same core from the 2022 World Cup. A lot has translated over into the present day of Saudi Arabia, but they're at the Club World Cup with Al Hilal. They're actually going to be playing today against Real Madrid, right? So I don't know. I didn't see them as a very strong collective unit against Haiti. Arguably the worst team, even though they walked away with a win with that penalty kick. The U.S. should win, and I expect to see a little bit more of that consistency, of that level of urgency, of that grit and that fight and that spirit that should be default in every single game you play. And this is what Pochettino has been celebrating, right? Okay, we got the grit, we got the spirit, we got that feeling of fight for your country. And then we build tactically off of that. So at least we're getting that against Trinidad. Then you build concepts. I expect to see a little bit more of the same and a win against Saudi Arabia.
Real quick, when you guys are assessing the U.S. men's national team and how they're performing and how they're doing day in and day out, how much do you take into account the opponents that they're playing? A Trinidad, a Saudi Arabia, as opposed to other stronger opponents. How do you assess the U.S. men's national team in comparison to that?
You can only play who's in front of you at this current moment, especially when you our host nation. Right? We see this from previous host nations. The thing I would like to see carry over from the first game, irregardless and through the rest of this Gold Cup of who's on the sheet, it's easy to get up for a Mexico. It's easy to get up for a Canada. These have been the games that leave me wanting more. The ruthlessness factor. If that first half would have been 1-0, they get the early goal, and then they would have gone into halftime, and then it's the 60th minute, I would have deemed that a failure in terms of what I was looking for the match. This Saudi side, they taught a lesson to the U.S. men's national team. They could teach a lesson. They taught a lesson to Haiti that if you don't put them away, all they need at the international level, you just need a half chance. And they took a half chance based off of the ill discipline of Haiti. The ruthlessness in the final third for Poch and his team, I want to see that tenfold against the Saudi side.
Right.
Because Saudi should have gotten hammered by Haiti.
Yeah, I agree. But it's difficult to assess big picture. I think it's just like the first couple of steps. The U.S. should cruise through this group. And I don't want to draw any big picture conclusions because the rivals aren't good enough. I think you can draw big picture conclusions against the teams that potentially can eliminate you in a World Cup or that you can potentially upset. So if we're looking at the team, I don't foresee too many changes. Maybe Adams is fit. I would kind of like to see one of Luca de la Torre or Sebastian Berhalter back in this team. Risking Adams against Saudi Arabia, I'd rather him be at 110% in the next couple of games other than this one. But what I'm seeing here, McKenzie in, Ream in. Specifically, this area of the field I'm not so concerned about. It's up here, McGlynn, Tillman, Luna. That's the consistency you want. These are going to be your killers, right? Yeah. Come knockout stage when the cookie starts to crumble, and then Haji Wright. Did Ojimen make the most of his opportunities? Yeah, he got a deflected goal, but who's going to be the guy? Who's going to be the guy in this Gold Cup? And I think Haji Wright came in the Trinidad game with hunger, with fire, and that number 9 position's up for grabs.
He looked like the Haji Wright that scored the hat-trick against Sunderland, that you gave him just a glimpse of goal, and he's right there. But in my opinion, the U.S. men's national team is only as good as the front line, but only as good as their midfield. This midfield trio is going to have to cook, should this be the lineup they go for. We know what Tyler can offer, and I'm with you. I thought that Luca de la Torre was worthy of another start. I liked him in that first matchup against Turkey. I thought he was the consistent factor. But this is a big Gold Cup for Johnny Cardozo, Nico.
Yeah.
Because he was underwhelming in the 2 friendlies.
He was very underwhelming, and he needs to start showing up for the U.S. men's national team. I'm so intrigued to see how he does paired alongside a Tyler Adams. 2 very defensive-minded players. The conversation we've had with Charlie from day one is that Cardozo always needs somebody that's smoother on the ball, that has a little bit more finesse. You look at every single team that Johnny Cardozo has played with, going back to his Inter days, he always had a partner. At Inter in Brazil, he had Charles Aranguis right next to him. Those are the 2 starting sixes. And when you have Tyler Adams, yes, obviously a more similar profile to Johnny Cardozo, but I would say a little bit better on the ball. It's just very interesting. If this was the final, this is the ideal team, right? You could make arguments for McKenzie or Ream, whoever you want, but this is my team. Perhaps Matt Turner, I don't know. Freese going again.
Keep him in. Keep him in.
Right?
Would you give Matt Turner an opportunity?
Keep Freese in. He did really well against didn't do much against Trinidad, but put him to the test until he deserves to lose that starting spot for this Gold Cup. We've seen what we've needed to see from Matt Turner. Unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know. I think there's the biggest question mark out of any position leading up to the World Cup is the goalkeeper position. Yeah. So why not try out Matt Freese again and again and again?
I'm very much for this, and just to put the cap on the midfield conversation, if I'm Johnny Cardozo, I have a chat with Malik Tillman and ask him what he had for breakfast, what he had for lunch, how he slept the night before, because the difference we saw in Tillman, that is the type of delivering and killer instinct we want to see on both sides of the ball. He was too casual in that friendly and disappointing. That whole game changed when he did what I've never seen him do for Betis. He's very secure on the ball. When just casually outside of the foot pass, bad. Game changes, result goes out the window, and it throws away a good 20 minutes. Another guy that still has a lot to prove, and his stock is rising, and I should be Jack McGlynn's agent. Jack, hire me because I'm pushing the PR, baby. Jack McGlynn, he is a player that offers you something different, Nico, and he's got a magical left foot. And yes, we're talking about the joke with him and Charlie and the racing. What he lacks in pace, he has, in Nigel Coker's favorite word, football intelligence, and of course, service with his left foot.
Yeah, and I wonder if that right wing is his ideal position, or the position to ideally get the most out of him instead of a deeper playmaking role. I would love to see, if Adams isn't fit, Cardozo next to Jack McGlynn to see how that works out, right?
Yeah.
If it is possible.
Where would you prefer to see McGlynn now that Nico is bringing that up?
I'd like to see him in midfield. The passing range that he offers, the assist he had on the first goal, that's a little byproduct of what he can do. Yes, he's on the right-hand side, but he already plays centrally. He comes in a narrow position. Right. And I used to hate playing against those sort of players as a defensive midfielder, because when the game's in front of you, when you have to step out to a player in front of you, it's the easy thing. But now If you have to go to a Jack McGlynn that's in the middle, but is now shading over to the right or to the left, now you're getting sucked out of position. And that's where first-time passes from around the corner, balls over the top, especially against the Saudi back line that struggles with running towards their own goal.
The ball he had for Luna, for example, right? Luna ended up having that shot saved, but it adds another wrinkle tactically, yes, because McGlynn is going to come in, use his left. The fullback has to overlap on that right-hand side because you're not getting that much verticality. Naturally, he interprets the game like that. He'll want to take a beat to see the game forward and see what his options are because his left foot is so good. I wonder how that changes the dynamic when not only do you have a fullback offering verticality on the right, but a right winger that properly that can give you a lot of vertical offensive dynamic. I wonder who that is, though. Who's going to be the right winger?